We are on a brink of mass adoption of cryptocurrencies, and Ripple XRP is on a good way to become #1 investment. Today, we will explore 10 possible things that could position XRP above everything. And similar to every video on Bitcoin Academy, this one is also 100% beginner-friendly. So without wasting time, let's jump straight into our first topic. One of the biggest milestones on the horizon for XRP is the approval of a spot ETF. But first, what exactly is an ETF? It stands for Exchange Traded Fund, a type of investment product that trades like a stock but gives exposure to an underlying asset, in this case, XRP. A spot ETF specifically means it holds the real asset, not just futures or derivatives, allowing investors to buy into XRP without owning it directly. Why is this a big deal? Because it opens the door for institutional investors, like retirement funds, pensions, and large asset managers, to invest billions into XRP through traditional financial platforms. According to Polymarket, a blockchain-based prediction market, the chances of an XRP ETF approval by year-end are now over 98%. Bitcoin's price surged massively after its own spot ETF was approved earlier this year. If XRP follows the same path, it could spark a flood of new demand, not from crypto traders, but from mainstream investors and Wall Street firms. Even more powerful is the psychological effect. An ETF approval signals that XRP is legit in the eyes of US regulators, giving confidence to those who were previously unsure. This could serve as the final green light for wealth managers, institutions, and even governments to start building XRP positions. In short, an XRP spot ETF could be the spark that launches mass adoption and positions XRP not just as a crypto token, but as a mainstream financial asset. And just like that, we move to next topic for today. One of the most important developments for XRP happened when the US Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC in short, officially dropped its years-long lawsuit against Ripple Labs. This lawsuit had created massive uncertainty as it questioned whether XRP was a security, a type of investment regulated under strict financial laws. With that legal cloud now lifted, XRP is finally free from regulatory limbo. But the next step is even bigger: full legislative clarity from US Congress. If lawmakers pass a bill that clearly defines XRP as not a security, it would instantly remove doubt for banks, hedge funds, and major financial players who were previously afraid to touch it. This kind of regulatory green light is like a permission slip for Wall Street to go all in. Why is this important? Institutions are risk-averse. They don't want to get involved in assets that could be suddenly banned or reclassified. Without legal clarity, many firms stayed on the sidelines. But with a clear, favorable regulatory status, XRP becomes fair game for everything, from corporate treasuries to pension funds and financial products. Beyond investment, a regulatory green light also opens the doors for deeper integration with banking and payment systems. Banks and fintech firms need assurance that the assets they use are compliant with US law, especially in cross-border payments and liquidity solutions. So while ETF hype makes the headlines, don't underestimate the power of legal clarity. It doesn't just protect Ripple, it unlocks an entirely new level of institutional adoption. If Congress delivers, XRP could go from controversial token to cornerstone of modern finance. All right, moving on to our next topic, and things are just getting interesting. One of the most powerful global catalysts for XRP could be its adoption by major international institutions like BRICS or the IMF. Let's break that down. BRICS is an alliance of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They've recently been working on creating their own cross-border payment systems and CBDCs, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currencies. These are digital versions of government-issued money. Now imagine if Ripple's technology, or XRP itself, gets selected as the bridge currency between these national digital currencies. That would instantly put XRP at the center of global trade between some of the world's largest and fastest-growing economies. We're not talking millions. We're talking access to trillions of dollars in annual trade volume. Similarly, the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, helps facilitate global financial stability and cross-border payments. If the IMF chooses XRP to streamline settlement between member countries, it would validate Ripple's role as a global liquidity provider. Think of XRP as the oil in the engine, not the product itself, but the lubricant that helps everything move smoothly between different currencies. Why is this so significant? Because government and institutional adoption is the holy grail in crypto. It's not just about price, it's about long-term utility and trust. If either BRICS or the IMF integrates Ripple's infrastructure or XRP into their systems, it would push the asset from speculative token to geopolitical tool. In short, XRP isn't just aiming to win Wall Street. It's playing on a global stage. And if it becomes the go-to liquidity bridge for major international networks, the upside could be historic. Excited yet? Wait until we cover all topics. These were just the beginning. All right, time to move on to next one. Imagine a world where bank payments happen instantly, not in hours or days, but seconds. That's the promise of FedNow, a real-time payment system launched by the US Federal Reserve in 2023. Now picture XRP playing a role behind the scenes, powering the instant transfer of money between banks. That possibility could be game-changing for Ripple. FedNow was designed to modernize the US banking system, and it's built to be compatible with ISO 20022, a global messaging standard for financial data. Here's where Ripple comes in. Ripple's network is already ISO 222 compliant. That means it's technically ready to plug into these systems and offer faster, cheaper cross-border transactions using XRP as a bridge currency. If Ripple's infrastructure gets integrated into FedNow or other US banking rails, XRP could be the asset that provides instant liquidity across banks. In simple terms, it would act like a universal translator between different currencies, settling payments quickly and with minimal friction. This isn't some wild fantasy. Ripple has already partnered with dozens of financial institutions globally, and the US banking sector is slowly warming up to blockchain solutions. Integration with FedNow would simply be the next step in using XRP not just internationally, but domestically, right in the heart of America's financial system. The implications? Massive demand for XRP as a settlement token, heightened trust from regulators and banks, and a deeper role for Ripple in reshaping the plumbing of the global economy. If this happens, XRP wouldn't just be another crypto. It could become the financial backbone of next-gen payments. Okay, time to dive in our next topic for today. One of the most explosive catalysts for XRP could be its adoption by major payment giants like Apple, PayPal, or Visa. These companies dominate the world of digital transactions, moving billions of dollars every day. If any one of them decides to integrate XRP into their infrastructure, even behind the scenes, the impact could be massive. Let's break it down. Companies like Apple and PayPal are always looking for ways to make global payments faster and cheaper. Traditional systems are slow, especially when money crosses borders. That's where Ripple's technology shines. It allows near-instant settlement using XRP as a liquidity token. This means XRP can be used to instantly convert one currency into another, eliminating the need for pre-funded bank accounts in multiple countries. Imagine Apple Pay or PayPal using XRP to move money between users in the US and Europe in seconds, with lower fees and better exchange rates. That wouldn't just be efficient, it would be revolutionary. Then there's Visa. While Visa already processes card payments globally, it's investing heavily in blockchain research and crypto infrastructure. A partnership with Ripple or integration of XRP into Visa's backend rails could bring institutional legitimacy and global scale all at once. While no official announcement has been made yet, industry rumors and job postings hint that these companies are actively exploring blockchain-based liquidity solutions. If XRP gets the nod, it could trigger a supply shock as demand from these massive platforms eats up available tokens. In short, XRP's adoption by a top-tier tech or payments company wouldn't just boost price, it would redefine its role in everyday finance. If Apple, PayPal, or Visa taps XRP, we're not just talking crypto anymore. We're talking financial revolution. We made it halfway through, but now things are getting juicy. Time to head straight into our next topic. Imagine what would happen if some of the world's biggest asset managers, like BlackRock or Fidelity, decided to include XRP in their investment products. That scenario isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. In fact, these firms were instrumental in bringing institutional money into Bitcoin through spot ETFs and retirement funds. If they do the same with XRP, the results could be explosive. Let's unpack this. BlackRock and Fidelity manage trillions of dollars in assets. They offer mutual funds, retirement plans, ETFs, and hedge fund services to institutional clients and everyday investors. When they add an asset to their offerings, it's not just a passive investment, it's a signal. It says this asset is trustworthy, mature, and worth including in a long-term portfolio. So what happens if XRP joins their list? First, it unlocks massive new demand from institutional investors who previously couldn't access XRP due to regulatory uncertainty or lack of traditional investment vehicles. Suddenly, pension funds, 401ks, and high net worth clients can get exposure to XRP, all without having to buy or store crypto directly. This also impacts price in a very real way. These funds don't just buy a little, They allocate in bulk, often hundreds of millions at a time. With XRP's circulating supply already tightly managed, even modest allocations from BlackRock or Fidelity could create a surge in demand. And don't forget credibility. When firms like these move, media attention follows, other institutions feel pressure to jump in, and retail investors gain more confidence. It's a full-scale ripple effect, pun absolutely intended. In short, if BlackRock or Fidelity adds XRP to their crypto offerings, it won't just be a financial event. It will be a cultural turning point, signaling XRP's arrival as a permanent fixture in global finance. All right, we arrived to our next topic. Let's dive in. Let's explore one of the most transformative trends in finance, real-world asset tokenization, and how XRP is perfectly positioned to be at the center of it. Tokenization is the process of turning real-world assets like real estate, stocks, commodities, or even fine art into digital tokens that live on a blockchain. And guess what? The XRP ledger, or XRPL, is already built for this. The XRPL is fast, cheap, and built for enterprise-grade use. That's why it's gaining attention as a prime platform for institutions to tokenize everything from real estate contracts to bond markets. When assets are tokenized on XRPL, XRP can be used as the bridge currency for settling trades instantly, across borders, and with minimal friction. Why does this matter? Because we're talking about unlocking trillions of dollars in illiquid or slow-moving assets and bringing them into a 24/7 digital marketplace. Imagine being able to invest in a fraction of a commercial building in London or a US Treasury bond with the click of a button and settle that trade in seconds using XRP. Major institutions like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and even the World Economic Forum are exploring tokenization as the future of finance. If Ripple can secure partnerships or pilot programs to tokenize assets on the XRP ledger, XRP's role becomes much more than just a payments token. It becomes the fuel of a new digital asset economy. The more tokenized activity that happens on XRPL, the more XRP is used for liquidity and movement. That increases both demand and utility, which are critical drivers for price and long-term adoption. In summary, mass tokenization on the XRP ledger could be the breakthrough moment where XRP transitions from speculation to infrastructure, powering a new era of digital finance. All right, we have few more topics to cover, so without wasting time, let's explain next one. One of the most telling indicators of XRP's real-world adoption is the growth of RippleNet, Ripple's global payments network. Today, RippleNet already boasts partnerships with over 500 financial institutions across more than 50 countries. But imagine what happens when that number crosses 1,000. That milestone would be more than symbolic. It would represent XRP being used at global scale for cross-border liquidity. RippleNet isn't just a network of banks. It's a fully integrated infrastructure for sending money across borders in seconds, not days. Many of these institutions use Ripple's on-demand liquidity (ODL) service, which leverages XRP as the bridge asset between currencies. This eliminates the need for pre-funded accounts and dramatically reduces the cost and time associated with international transfers. As more banks and financial service providers join RippleNet, the need for faster, cheaper liquidity grows, and XRP is the key that unlocks it. Reaching 1,000 partners signals widespread institutional confidence and real utility. It means XRP isn't just being held, it's being used in the background every day to move money across the globe. The implications of this scale are massive. With every new bank added, Ripple gains access to more corridors, more currencies, and more transaction volume. And as that volume increases, so does the demand for XRP to power these settlements. This isn't hypothetical. It's already happening in corridors like Mexico, the Philippines, and parts of Europe. Crossing the 1,000 bank threshold isn't just about numbers. It marks XRP's evolution from a speculative crypto asset to a trusted piece of global financial infrastructure. And with RippleNet expanding rapidly, that milestone may arrive sooner than most expect. When it does, XRP's position as a liquidity powerhouse will be undeniable. Okay, we saved best for the last, and trust me, you want to hear last two topics. Starting with this one, let's talk about one of the most dramatic catalysts that could shake up the entire XRP ecosystem, an escrow burn, or major XRP supply lockup. Now, if you're new to crypto, you might wonder, what is escrow in this context? Ripple currently holds a significant amount of XRP, over 40 billion tokens, in monthly released escrow accounts. These escrows were created to assure the market that Ripple wouldn't flood supply all at once. But what if Ripple or another major holder made a bold move and permanently burned or locked a big portion of that XRP? That would drastically reduce the circulating or future supply, And in basic economics, when supply drops and demand stays the same or increases, price typically goes up. The crypto space has seen similar moves before. For instance, Ethereum reduced supply by burning transaction fees, and Binance frequently burns BNB tokens to reduce its circulating supply. These events tend to create strong bullish sentiment because they add scarcity, and scarcity drives value. Now apply that concept to XRP. If Ripple decides to burn, lock, or cancel large portions of escrowed XRP, it would send a powerful message. We believe in XRP's long-term value and aren't here to dump on the market. This could immediately boost investor confidence, invite institutional buyers, and trigger a supply shock that drives prices upward. There are already community discussions and even legal pressures pushing Ripple to do something major with the escrow. Whether it's through public demand, internal strategy, or regulatory incentives, the possibility is on the table. In summary, a major reduction in XRP's available supply, whether by burning or permanent lockup, could become one of the strongest price catalysts to date. It's not just about utility anymore. It's about scarcity, trust, and signaling to the world that XRP is ready to play the long game. All right, maybe the most interesting question out of everything we covered is strategic reserve status. Let's dive in. Imagine a world where XRP isn't just used by investors or fintech companies, but held by governments and corporations as a strategic reserve asset. That's the next level potential we're talking about here. Strategic reserves are typically made up of commodities or currencies that are deemed vital for national security or economic stability. Historically, this included things like gold, oil, and the US dollar. But what if XRP joins that list? This isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, XRP was recently included in a proposed US Digital Asset Reserve Index, sparking speculation that policymakers are beginning to consider crypto as part of national financial infrastructure. If adopted, XRP could serve as a liquidity buffer, a digital asset that governments or large corporations hold to facilitate international trade, currency swaps, or crisis hedging. Why XRP? Because it's fast, scalable, and specifically designed for cross-border liquidity. If a country's currency suddenly devalues, or if a corporation needs instant access to global liquidity, holding XRP could act like an emergency exit or a universal translator between monetary systems. But it's not just about holding, it's about trust. For XRP to be selected as a reserve asset, it would mean global recognition of its stability, utility, and regulatory compliance. That could influence everything from central bank policy to treasury allocations and even global trade dynamics. And if multiple countries begin to adopt XRP in this way, especially within alliances like BRICS or the Global South, it could become digital oil for the financial engine of the world. In short, if XRP becomes a strategic reserve asset, it would elevate the token from financial tool to geopolitical asset. That's not just bullish, that's historic. Congrats, you made it to the very end. But stay a second longer. You are able to see how just one company with one cryptocurrency is disturbing and reshaping financial world as we know it. But you should know that there are many more powerful crypto projects out there. And in order to catch that first mover advantage, you need to educate as much as possible. So I would suggest watching one of these two videos you see on the screen right now. I hope you found this video helpful. If yes, make sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We bring new educational content every few days. Don't miss it. See you in my next video.